It's a little bit about myself. I'm from Austria. I'm here for like 22 years. I'm a functional nutritionist, author of 2 books. I'm also like a longevity coach, so I help people live longer because it's not science fiction anymore. It actually has become reality, and you will understand it better after that lecture. Like I said, I'm author of 2 books. My first book was From Chubby Kid to Longevity Hero, which is basically my life, how I got started in all this. Started very early when I was 13 years old, and how I went to Hollywood, the ups and downs, and found myself back in the health industry. And the second book is kind of like based on this. It's called America's Food Pandemic: The Hidden Crisis, which is a bestseller on Amazon for a good reason, and it's perfect timing too, because people are waking up to what is really going on. And we're gonna talk about protein and everything, but I want to give you a little bit of history. I want you to understand, how did America get the title as the sickest country in the world? 6 months ago, it was 75% of Americans have a chronic disease. This morning, I didn't even have time to update it. Now it's 85% of Americans have at least one chronic disease. It's rising every year. We also have the sickest children in the world. And so obviously something is not working here. And I think after this lecture, you would get a good idea, of what's really going on. Fingers are too dry. All right, I want to give you a little bit of history. How did we get to all this? It started in the 80s with tobacco companies such as Archer Randall's and Philip Morris. You might remember in the 80s, and there was all the lawsuits, right? And the government actually came out and said, hey, smoking is bad for you, causes, heart disease and cancer. And for some reason, people actually listened and stopped smoking. So they lost billions and billions of dollars. And they had to come up with an idea to make up for the loss. So, from a company point of view, they came up with a genius idea. For us customers, the consumer, not so much. They applied the same principles. As a matter of fact, they took the same scientists that got you hooked, addicted to cigarettes, and applied that to food. And and they bought all those processed food companies and all the sister companies. So remember, whenever you buy processed food, anything in a package, you actually buying from tobacco companies. And they engineered the bliss point. Does anybody know the bliss point? It's basically the perfect ratio of fat, sugar, and salt that hits the dopamine. And I'm talking about the same dopamine release as you would do drugs, cocaine, or smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol. They have achieved with food. And that's why it's so hard to get off that kind of food. Also, which we have to mention, is the lobbying power. The food industry spends 5 times more than the oil industry. And they paid off the FDA, the USDA, and all the academic institutions, and to overlook the harmful effect of those, foods. And as a result, that was the history of ultra-processed foods, which dominates the market today. 70% of Americans eat some sort of processed food, every single day. And because of the corruption and, the lobbying power, we ended up with a food pyramid like this. I remember when this food pyramid came out, it went viral. Like everybody, talked about it, because it's such. Can anybody tell me, when you look at that food pyramid, what's wrong with this picture? This is not a food pyramid for health. This is an advertising for processed food companies. It's so clear that there is money involved. The fact that they even had, to post this, you don't even have to be a nutritionist to understand what is going on. So let's go over it. I can promise you, if you consume, this every single day, you're gonna end up with chronic diseases, and for sure, I put any money on the table, you end up with type 2 diabetes. Because everything you see on here is not just processed, but everything is high in sugar. Now, first we have watermelon. Yes, it can be natural, but it's high in sugar. Kale. Who thinks that kale is a superfood? Kale actually has shown it causes joint pain. They are high in defense, chemicals like oxalates and stuff, and they found out they start crystallizing, and people, get joint pains. You can actually, a horse doesn't even eat kale. I used to eat kale too. I didn't like it, but because it was promoted as superfoods, I did it. And then, I did some deeper research, and I found out that it's actually not so good. Frosted mini wheats, again, ultra processed. Unsweetened almond milk, okay in moderation, but again, it's part of the processed food companies. Whenever you see anything with non-fat or low fat, it's high in sugar. We only have like two flavor mechanisms to play around with. Either it's high in fat or high in sugar, and the better choice is always high fat and no sugar. But you will understand this in a little bit. And then again, chocolate covered almonds. Again, why chocolate covered? Why not just almonds? And here, orange juice with calcium. Whenever you see apple juice with calcium or like fortified with vitamin added, well, I'm going to explain this in a short because we don't have so much time. Does anybody know about the MTHFR gene mutation? Has anybody heard about that? Yeah, so yeah, you know everything. You did your study. Yeah, so 44% of the population has this gene mutation, MTHFR. So that means there's a 50-50 chance that you or the person next to you, might have the gene mutation. So what does it mean? That means let me explain it this way. If I take the crude oil out of the ground and I put that in the gas tank, the car can do nothing with it. It cannot recognize it. It needs to be refined, right, to gasoline. In the human body, everything, the way you eat it, doesn't get used in the way. Everything needs to be refined. And in humans, we call it methylation. And if your methylation is not working or is completely broken, depending if the gene is red, yellow, or green. Red means it's not working at all. Yellow means half of the time, and green means it's working. And if that's the case, and you get exposed to, as an example, because here in America, everything is with folic acid. Your doctor tells you, oh, consume folic acid, even like during pregnancy and stuff. The problem with that is folic acid is the synthetic form of methylfolate, 5-methylfolate. You can buy both as a supplement form. Folic acid is maybe $1 cheaper. Now, if you don't have the gene mutation, and you consume folic acid, no problem. You can make the conversion to methylfolate. However, now we know that 44% have it, so there's a chance that you might have it or know somebody, and they cannot make it. So the folic acid starts accumulating in the body, has shown to cause cancer, especially prostate cancer in men. And some of the side effects, it's actually incredible, are, especially in kids, ADHD, ADD, autism, anxiety. And I'm talking about anxiety like you were home and watching TV and all of a sudden, you get an anxiety attack for no reason. Recurring pregnancy loss. Then high blood pressure, even though you're healthy and you have high blood pressure and you can explain it. Also, a good way is if you look at your blood test and you have high homocysteine in your blood test, and so on. And then you go to the doctor, and they just give you, a tablet to cover the symptom, but the underlying issue is still not fixed. Yeah, actually, let me give you like a real life story. Like a few, what was that? I mean, 8 months ago, I had a family sent to me. The kid was diagnosed with ADHD. Every time they got ready to go to school, it turned to a wrestling match to get the kid in school, right? And she noticed a pattern. Every time the kid was eating the cereal, and drinking orange juice, which is packed with folic acid, the kid was like on cocaine all over the place. One day they were running late and they didn't have time, to do the breakfast. And she noticed, wait a minute, the kid is normal today. What was different? And it was like, they didn't eat breakfast, but they can have nothing to do with that. And then I went to the doctor, and the doctor goes, oh, yeah, it's ADHD, here's the medication, blah, 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 it's fine. And then, she got referred to me, make a long story short, and she told me the story, and I said, well, it sounds like the kid might have the gene mutation. It's very common. Sure enough, we did the test, the gene test, the kid had the mutation. So we removed all the folic acid, from the diet, which is not easy because in America we spray everything unless it's organic. All the bread, all the wheat products, even some of the rice, anything that says fortified, enriched, or vitamin added, has that. And again, if you don't have the gene mutation, it's okay. But if you do, you're in trouble. And then we have whatever, honey nut Cheerios, dates. You get the point. Everything is high in sugar, and processed. And the fact that they put ground beef on the bottom is a joke. And as a result, if people follow that food pyramid, That's how we earned the title as the sickest country in the world. I'm talking about, the Western society, not like. And so 6 in 10 adults in America have at least one chronic disease. And some of them are not even aware of it. 4 in 10 have multiple chronic diseases. If you ever ask yourself why America had the highest COVID deaths, it's because of this. Because so many people already had multiple chronic diseases. And so if a virus comes along, it doesn't take much. 70% of all death in America is caused by chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, and so on. And last thing here, the healthcare spending. I just want to put that in perspective. Last year, we spent $4.7 trillion on healthcare spending. I mean, that number is insane. And if you, boil it down, it's approximately $14,200 per person in America per year. And it's projected, to go up to $7.5 trillion, which is 20% of our nation's GDP. I mean, look at the numbers, like from 2000, straight up. It flattened out here a little bit and straight up again. And now, you be the judge. You tell me. We have the best doctors, right? We have the best medicine, best healthcare system. But then how do you explain this? Why are we getting sicker and sicker every single year when we have the best technology and the best medication? Something is not working in this country. And yeah, I mean, it's true. We spend more money to live sicker lives, or not healthier lives. And it can all be traced back to this. All right, so here in America, we have over 10,000 chemicals, additives, pesticides in our food supply. Just to put that in perspective, in Europe, we have less than 400. It's heavily regulated. And if you ever ask yourself this question, how come that we end up with so many chemicals in America, but not in other countries? It's because here, you can introduce, XYZ chemical, to food, right? And if something happens down the line, then you have to take them to court and you have to prove that this caused whatever, disease or something. And that process can take years. In Europe, it's the opposite. In Europe, you have to prove safety first before you can bring it into the food. And that's why we have way less chemicals. How many times did you hear that story? If I go to Europe, I eat pizza and bread, I feel good, I lose weight, I can explain it. I mean, I'm sure everybody has a story or knows somebody. Some of the common additives are preservatives, artificial sweetener, colorants, emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are chemicals that get added if something doesn't bind well, like water and oil-based. But if you add those chemicals, it works perfectly. And then herbicides, glyphosate, also known as Roundup. They have a huge lawsuit been going on for the last 6 months. I'm not sure if you guys seen it. And because they know now it causes cancer. And the people that were spraying it, a lot of the people got cancer because of it. And, I mean, you can look it up online. There's a lot going on right now. But, they did a huge payout on somebody, I think like $200 million or something. And now everybody's suing them because now they finally have enough proof collected. And it's banned in most countries. And if it's not banned, it's heavily regulated. Here in America, not so much. We spray over 250 million pounds per year on our crops. I mean, you see those individuals, right, with their massive suit and like spraying, but hey, they're spraying our food and we eat this. Like, does it make sense? And of course, because of that, that the leftover, the residues, ends up in our drinking water, in the air, in the soil. The problem is, I'm sure you heard about this too, right? That plants have less nutrients than they used to have. And that's because of this. Because all those chemicals, those pesticides, going into the soil, they kill the bacteria. And if there's less healthy bacteria, the microbes in the soil, then plants have less nutrients. I think the last study I read was you have to eat 5 apples a day to get to the same amount of vitamins and minerals, than like 40 years ago, where you only had to eat 1 apple. And then this one is interesting. There's an herbicide called Additives, which is banned in Europe and many other countries. Here in America, we're still using it. Speaking of hormone disruptor, This herbicide in a study turned male frogs to female frogs. It chemically castrated them and turned them to female frogs. And we're spraying our food supply with this. We have another pandemic in America, which is called, a pandemic of low testosterone. You should know about it. Men, on average, lost about 67% of testosterone. A man at 65, 60 years ago, on average, has a higher testosterone than a 25-year-old today. And I've seen many, many, blood tests with young individuals. Shocking. 18 years old, 20 years old, or 25, 28. I've never seen anybody over 800. I was like 250, 280, 350, 400. At that age, you should be over 1,000, but not anymore. And then the GMO. 90% of all the crop in America is genetically modified. Corn, soybeans, canola, cotton, sugar beets, alfalfa, potato, apples, and so on. Now, here in America, they're telling you that genetically modified food is safe, right? Then how come it's banned in Europe? And in Russia, it's not just banned, you go to jail for 20 years. Does it make sense? Don't you, question what's going on here? Here in America, all the studies they did on GMO crops only went on for 3 months. They exposed, the rats and the mice, on genetically modified crops. And after 3 months, there was no significant side effects. And so they deemed it safe. It's good to go. However, there was a famous French study. You can look it up online. That study went on for 2 years. Same study, just, for 2 years rather than 3 months. And that study has shown that after 9 months, 10 months, around that time, every mouse and every rat that got exposed to the GMO crops had tumors growing the size of tennis balls. And that's one reason of many, why in Europe it's not accepted, and why in Russia it's not just accepted, you go to jail for 20 years. Yeah, and here, so some more of those chemicals. Yeah, we talked about the preservatives, the additives and stuff. They also, mess up your gut bacteria. And then, you have poor nutrition absorption. And once you have nutrient deficiency, you have an array of, health issues. Artificial sweetener and dyes, they are linked to neurotoxicity and behavioral changes. They can literally influence on decision making and how, you behave in certain situations. Seed oils. How many times did you hear that seed oils, omega-6 fatty acids, are inflammatory and they're so bad for you? However, there's something to say. Like seed oils, we talk about the seed oils on the shelf. We don't talk about, when you buy the plants or the seeds, and there's also omega-6 fatty acids in there. That's okay. It's about how we process the seed oils. If you look it up and how we process these seed oils, you're gonna like throw up. Like they extract the oils from the seeds, then they deodorize it because it has a funny smell. They also bleach it because it comes out like yellowish, and then they have to use hexane, which is a very toxic chemical, to liquefy it, just to give you like a little bit of insight. And then it ends up on the shelf, and then we consume it. And then, pesticide residues. We already talked about the pesticides, but it also pesticides also impair, liver detoxification, and everything goes through the liver when it comes to detoxing. All the environmental issues, the food, the water we drink, everything, right? And if pesticides come into play, then your liver is working overtime, and that, builds up toxic buildup. Have you guys heard of the rain barrel effect? There's even like a good book about that. The rain barrel effect is basically when a baby is born, right? The baby is, fresh. There's no toxic. Well, actually, I have to take that back because now a study has shown that every baby born today actually has already heavy metals and microplastic. But let's just say, for better explanation, they are, healthy, right? And then you have the rain barrel, and the minute they're alive, they breathe, they walk around and eat, there's a toxic, buildup. Every day, a few drops, of the water goes in the barrel. And then depending on your lifestyle, depending on how you treat your body and what you eat, that barrel is going to fill up quick, or not so quick. However, on average, when people hit 45, 50 and up, that's where most people get, real health issues. And it's not so much about, people always blame everything on aging. It's so funny. It has nothing to do with aging. Like she would know. It has nothing to do with aging. It really comes down to the toxic load. The reason why you get away with much of this when you're young is because your toxic load is empty or low. And when you get older and you don't do any detox programs to get the heavy metals out, to get the plastics out, to get the toxins out of your body, that will fill up quick. And then when it gets close to the top, that's when we get sick. That's when you get cancer. That's when you get heart disease. That's when you get Alzheimer and all those chronic diseases. And that's why it's always important to make sure that that barrel, stays empty or half empty, or keep it under control. Oh, and by the way, in Ayurvedic medicine, they no matter what health issues you have, they never focus, on the skin rash you have, or the hormone issues you have, or the cancer you have. No, they focus on detoxing. And so they basically emptying out the barrel of toxins, and then the body, believe it or not, can heal itself if the body has the right ingredients. And then, I wrote this is like a big one, the microplastic, the PBA and the phthalates. I wrote about this an entire chapter in my book because honestly, I think if we don't get this under control in the next 20 years, this will have not such a happy ending. So many women can't even get pregnant no more because there's so much microplastic, in the tissue, in the eggs, in the placenta. It's also, it mimics estrogen, which is another reason why man is losing its testosterone, because the more plastic you have in your tissue, estrogen goes up, testosterone tanks. And then the pesticides on top of that, remember that estrogen and everything, and it feminizes man. And and it comes from the packaging. Never ever, like I changed everything. I have nothing plastic at home. And if you have anything plastic, throw it away, and never heat anything, in plastic container. Never have a bottled water in your car in that heat. There's so much plastic leaching into your water from that heat. It's not worth it. I'd rather suffocate. What else do we have here? Yeah, and then we have, we already talked about this. And then high sodium and MSG. That's also a little bit controversial. High sodium, how many times did you hear that high sodium is bad for you, causes blood pressure and everything? Well, the answer is yes and no. It depends what sodium. If we talk about salt, like Celtic salt, Baja salt, high quality salts, they have like 85%, 90% minerals. They actually help you to lower blood pressure, and they actually help you to balance out blood sugar and everything. Now, that sodium we're talking about is, the sodium in processed food. It doesn't have any value, it doesn't have much nutrition. Yeah, that one retains water. And if there is, water retention, and our arteries, everything is in a closed system, and pressure, pushes on the artery, pressure goes up. And then MSG. MSG is a food chemical that's been added to every processed food. Even a lot of restaurants are using it because it's a flavor enhancer. If you have any food that doesn't taste good, you add MSG, oh, it's perfect. And then we have synthetic flavor enhancer that hijack your appetite. I can actually give you a really good example and ask you guys some questions too. When you go to McDonald's, or like say, I'm probably not going no more, but if you have been or eating processed food or like, chips or anything, how easy is it to overeat and you have a hard time stopping? Just try to eat 3 chips, then put it away and see what happens. It's almost impossible. When I give you a little story of myself, like when I grew up in Austria, we only had one McDonald's in the area. Well, not even the area, it was like an hour away. And we only went there like maybe once or twice, every 2 months. And you can imagine, I used a chance. Oh my God, like we're finally here and we ate McDonald's. I was able to eat 10 burgers at like 14 years old, 4 Big Macs, Fish Macs, cheeseburger and everything. And I noticed I never got the satiety feeling. I never felt full, satisfied. I was so full there was no space left, but I didn't get that, oh, stop eating. Later, I learned that they add chemicals, and that, by the way, that's also in processed food, that temporarily inhibit leptin. Leptin is a hormone that gets released from the fat cells that tells you, hey, stop eating, we're full. That's the feeling when you eat and like, oh, I'm good. But have you noticed that when you eat processed food, or like fast food and anything, you don't get that? And that, well, I mean, it kind of makes sense because, the burgers are only like a few bucks. So they make the money with the masses. And the only way they make money is for you to eat as much as you can. And if they get people like me that eat like 10 burgers, like I did back in the days. And then we have inflammatory ingredients. Corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup. I don't want to talk too much about sugar because my entire chapter is about this in the next one. But high fructose corn syrup is sugar on steroids. In my opinion, and it's going to be interesting. In my opinion, sugar is not for human consumption. And I'm going to give you an entire list why, and then you can be the judge. But corn syrup, is like 10 times sweeter than regular sugar. And the problem is, our bodies are just not made for that. We are not made for that, to shoot up your glucose and down, up and down, up and down like a heartbeat. If you go back in history, you don't even have to believe me or believe anybody or like read studies. Just think about it. When in history, go back hundreds of years, go back thousands of years, we never ever consumed the amount of sugar we're consuming today. An average American today consumes between 80 to 100 grams of sugar per day. That comes up to approximately 160 pounds to 200 pounds. I'm like 195 pounds. That's what just look at this. That's how much sugar an average American eats. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And it's so easy because, it's in liquids, it's in drinks. It doesn't take much, right? You drink it and you can feel it. You have like a few Cokes and eat a little bit and you're already up there. And and then hydrogenated oils. Hydrogenated oils are oils that have been, chemically altered to increase the shelf life. There's an old saying that the longer the shelf life of the product, the shorter will be yours. And they also speed up, the aging process too. And then when it comes to processed carbs, the spike insulin, processed carbs can be anything that has sugar or is high glycemic, such as, white bread, white pasta, even white potato. Your glucose responds to that. And keep in mind, it is impossible to burn fat when insulin is activated, or if you have glucose. The body is a glucose burning machine. Whenever the body has the chance to burn glucose, it will always go for glucose. And only if that's not available, then the body turns to burning fat. And that's where like a low carb diet comes into play when people try to lose fat or like lose weight. But I'm going to talk about this more in the sugar. And here we have a few more. The toxic burden on the mitochondria. Yeah, if the mitochondria produces energy, cellular energy in the form of ATP, if that one is full of toxins, you're going to be tired and exhausted. No matter how much coffee you drink, you just don't get that level back. And as a result, it's linked to sarcopenia because, when you don't move, no function, no working out, your body starts, falling apart. And it's especially important for, the aging population, because nobody wants to go to the gym or do anything if you're tired. And even if you drink, coffee, it still doesn't get you that, energy, because coffee doesn't even give you energy. It just blocks the endosine receptor. And then damage to DNA. That also happens, for all those food chemicals. It speeds up the aging process. The telomeres, which is the end cap of your DNA. It's kind of like, the shoelaces that keeps the laces together. And the telomeres, in longevity, we used to measure only the telomeres, when we measured the biological aging. But now we know it's a little bit more complicated, but still a good indicator. The shorter telomere, the shorter your life, because, when that shoelace is falling apart and everything is falling apart, it's not holding the DNA together. However, there's an enzyme called telomerase, which can be activated through certain, nutrients, which you can find in whole foods and stuff. And then you can also elongate your life again. And now we get to the fun part. I think after this chapter, everybody's going to hate me. Why high sugar is not for human consumption. Is there anybody that would disagree with me? Nobody. Does anybody eat sugar here on a daily basis? I know you do, and you do. Okay, well, like I said before, when you go back in history, we never consumed the amount of sugar we do today. And I'm not talking about the berries, the apples, because they're packed, in fibers and everything. And when you eat that, the insulin spike and it's not as high. It's like the fibers slow down the digestive, process of the sugar in the apple and stuff. So you don't get those high spikes. So that's different. I'm talking about the soda, the chocolate, all the processed stuff, because that shoots up, your insulin. But here's an interesting one. Glycation. So that you remember it and never forget, I give you a real life example. Let's say you guys go to a steakhouse. You haven't eaten much. You eat the steak, which is fat and protein, and then you eat a little salad. And then the waitress comes up to you, oh, can I give you guys a dessert? And you're like, you know what, I didn't eat much today. My calories are low. Yeah, give me a dessert. I eat some chocolate cake, right? So here's what's going to happen. From the steak, you have the fat and the protein, going to the bloodstream. Now, sugar comes into play. Sugar, glucose in the blood, binds with proteins and with the fats in the body, and they start glycating, malforming, crystallizing, if you will, and they create something we call AGEs, advanced glycation end products. Now, those crystals, those AGEs, get deposited in all your tissue. They literally break down your collagen and elastin. You get sagging skin. You can see this in individuals that eat a lot of sugar, years over years and years. Their skin is hanging. If you don't eat a lot of sugar, sure, may all get wrinkles, but the skin is still up here. And yeah, I heard that like a few times. It's like, oh, I just have bad genetics. I'm like, no, there's no gene that causes sagging skin. It's called glycation. But yeah, you can look that up. You age 7 times faster if you consume sugar every single day because of the glycation. And keep in mind, AGEs are naturally found in food. And then depending on how you cook it, high heat food, grilling when the steak turns nice and brown, or even like your toast, right? Yeah, that's all AGEs too. So we get exposed to it a lot. And then it also triggers chronic inflammation, which is the root cause of all diseases. It is linked to Alzheimer's and dementia. We have a name for it now, type 3 diabetes. The name already explains it. I don't even have to say nothing, right? If Alzheimer's and dementia is called now type 3 diabetes, what does it tell you? Sugar. It comes from sugar. I don't believe, especially in the aging population, where you're more prone to issues, why putting yourself out to a lot of sugar if you can get Alzheimer's dementia? Because it's not something that starts in a few weeks. We're talking about years and years of a process. And then it also causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is kind of like, I'll give you an analogy. If I would go to the gym every single day and lift heavy weights without taking a break, and I don't sleep much, after like a week or so, I won't be able to lift that weight no more. I'm too exhausted. I'm doing it every day. I don't rest enough. Insulin is the same way. If you consume a lot of sugar throughout the day, every day, for years, 24/7, the pancreas releases insulin, and the insulin is trying to take care of the glucose, the sugar, to take it out of the blood, trying to get it into the cell or into the fat. And over time, there's more insulin getting released, but they can't do the job anymore. It's like me, like in the gym, oh, I'm too tired, I can't do it anymore. You can do a test. I don't know why doctors don't do it automatically. You have to ask them. Ask for an insulin, blood test. It shows how much insulin you have in your blood, and if it's high, more than normal, then there's a high chance that you have insulin resistance, because that means more insulin gets released because it can't do its job no more, and then you end up with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. But honestly, this is such an easy fix. I cannot tell you how many people I turned around in like 4 or 5 weeks. If a doctor tells you that you have to be on medication because of type 2 diabetes, it's the biggest BS. I've done this so many times. It's so easy. You just cut the sugar, eat low carbs, do a little bit of intermittent fasting, and it goes down, really quick. And I'm going to explain a little bit more, how. It also increases the visual fat, which is the fat, between your organs that acts like a cushion. I'm sure you have seen, people before. They're like skinny all over the place, and it looks like they have a football in here. Well, that could be a few things, but also the fat that pushes on the organs. There's no space, so it comes out. Also can mean that they have inflammation in the gut, parasites, and so on. And that's an interesting one too. It disrupts your microbiome. For better understanding, let's just call them the good and the bad. Let's just say there's the good gut bacteria that likes the fibers and all the healthy stuff, and then you have the bad ones that love the sugar and all that stuff. Now, the funny part is that is not even an analogy. Your microbiome communicates with your brain directly through the spinal cord. That we didn't even know that for the longest, but they actually do. They can influence. I'm not joking what I'm saying now. I actually read about it and I couldn't stop laughing. They can influence not just decision making, but also the people you date. I'm like, okay, so does it mean I'll have too much sugar in my system if I pick the wrong partner all the time? That was so funny. Yeah, they really can interfere with that. When you get cravings, right? When like, oh, I crave like a pizza, I crave like whatever, like sugar or anything. That shouldn't even happen. Craving shouldn't exist no more. If you crave, that's basically the gut bacteria telling your brain, hey, I'm missing my processed food. Where's the sugar? Where's the sugar? And then you interpret that as, oh, I have cravings. I need to eat something. Oh, I feel a little bit dizzy. I feel a little weak. And then you eat your donut. I'm good again. And then this is my favorite. It depletes your nutrients. Okay. Around Christmas, why do you think most people get sick around the holidays? Does anybody know? Oh, you already know now. My mom always used to tell me, of course, because it's cold outside, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in a cold plunge every day. If I would get sick because of the temperature, I would be sick every day. No, it's actually because what we all do, except me, I'm not, eat a lot of sugar and cookies and all that stuff around the holidays. So whenever you eat sugar, and remember, on the holidays, we eat sugar every day, right? Because there's Thanksgiving and everything. You compromise your immune system by like 35 to 40%, depending the study you read. But, let's just say 35%, for 5 to 6 hours. And at the same time, the sugar also depletes the magnesium, the B vitamins, the chromium, the very nutrients you need for the immune system to function. Now you compromise your immune system. On top of that, you don't eat healthy, so probably don't even have much left of the B vitamins, the magnesium. You leached it out too, and now you get exposed to you're in the gym, exposed to like a bacteria, virus. Normally you wouldn't even feel it because your body is like fighting it off, but now because you compromised every day, and now you get sick. Now it hits you, and that's really the truth behind. And you can try it out. Try to go without sugar, this year in the holidays, and there's a chance that you won't get sick. And that's an interesting one too. When you go to the doctor and you do a blood test, and you see that your triglycerides, your LDL, and your cholesterol is high, and you're like, I'm not eating any fat. How is that even possible? Well, it's actually not the fat that raises it; it's the sugar. And here's why. When remember I told you before, the body is using glucose always as number one. It's almost like if your favorite ice cream is chocolate, no matter what you have here, I'm always picking chocolate. That's how the body is with glucose, right? And whenever you eat a lot of glucose, you also have to eat, protein and fat. It's impossible not to eat that because it's given in everything. So now the protein and the fat starts accumulating. The body is not burning it because you're eating glucose, all day long, even like at night or in the morning. So the body really never gets a break. So you turn your body into a glucose burning machine. But something has to happen with all the fat you're consuming, right? So it slowly, starts accumulating. It gets, obviously, around the waist, but also it also ends up in your bloodstream. And then also, that's how you get a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because the sugar gets converted into glycogen and into triglycerides stored in the liver. And if you keep consuming the same way, high sugar, high glycemic carbs, then that fat starts accumulating because it doesn't get used. And it's also an easy fix. Cut the sugar, cut the carbs, and then the body is forced, if there's no glucose here and the body needs to burn energy, the body is forced now to use that fat, turn it back to glycogen from the liver, take it from the bloodstream, take it from your waste, and it burns it as energy. Yes, in that process, also muscles are burned a little bit, right? I mean, everybody's different, it depends, but generally speaking, that's how it works. And I can prove it to you. If you have a high triglycerides or high LDL in your blood test, for 4 or 5 weeks, don't eat any carbs and no sugar, just like vegetables, healthy, meat. You don't even have to worry about, eating a fat steak, because if there's no sugar available, the body's going to burn it as energy. It's only a problem if you mix the sugar with the fat, but the body is always burning sugar first, and this one has to go somewhere. That is really the issue. So it's really sugar. Sugar is the culprit for many diseases in this country. Where were we? The weak and immune system, already talked about this. Oh yeah, and feeding cancer. We all know that sugar feeds cancer. I can actually, should I say it? 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call from a friend of mine. It's like, hey, can you help my buddy? His son has cancer. He's 22 years old. He's in Beverly Hills in the hospital. And I'm like, okay, I can talk to them. I know nothing about it. He goes, oh, just talk to him. Okay. So he calls me right away. It was already like at 8 at night. It's almost like my sleepy time. But he sounded like, urgently. And so, make a long story short, I talked to him. He goes, yeah, he's 22 years old. He's stage 4 cancer. It's, doesn't do so well, and he can't even like walk no more. It's like very weak and everything. And I said, okay, I'm not really allowed without being a patient to help you, but since my friend, referred you, okay, like what's going on? I said, let's start from scratch. What happened? And then also, what is he eating? He goes, oh, for the last 2 weeks, like he's been doing a little bit better, and you would give him ice cream every day, to like give him energy. I'm like, whoa, what did you just say? And I said something I regret saying, and you will know in a little bit. I said, you give him sugar. Did the doctors not tell you that sugar, feeds cancer cells? And it literally, I said that, I wish you wouldn't have. I said, you're literally killing him. The very next day, he passed away. So I wish you wouldn't have said that. But, I thought, when you told me everything, I was up till like 11 at night. I wrote everything down and I sent it to him. And I was wondering, I didn't hear from him. And yeah, and then I heard like 2 days later that he passed. And I was a little bit too late. I helped people before from stage 3, to go down to like nothing with, lifestyle and everything. It works. And it's not easy, because in the first place, because you got cancer, it's because you were not that healthy. I know I hear it all the time. Oh, that's cancer. That's genetically, yeah, it's a small percentage. Most cancers are metabolic because of environmental factors and the food we eat. Adding a few more. Yeah, and here you can see, look, how easy is it to get to like 60 to 100 grams a day? All you have to do is like drink 2 of those, and you eat your regular food every day, and you up like so easy. But this is the worst. When you eat it, at least you get satiated, but when you drink it, you don't feel it. You get the sugar and you get the calories, but you don't feel it. It doesn't satiate you. And also, if anybody works in an office or used to work in an office, the energy crash and the mood swings. You get the donut, hi, everything happy, and then after like 30 minutes, like, don't talk to me. And did you know that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine? Well, it's very similar. Okay, so sugar and cocaine activate the same, pathway, the dopamine pathway, and the same spike, the same thing. They did a study with rats. They locked up 20 rats in a cage with sugar water and 20 rats in a cage with cocaine water. They left them in there for a while, and then they gave them the option, put them in one cage and gave them both options. And guess what happened? Only one rat went for the cocaine motor. The rest went for the sugar. And studies like that actually have shown that it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. The only difference is sugar is accepted, cocaine not so much. That's literally the only difference. And it's also like a hormone, disruptor. Like we said, plastic and everything. But the one I want to talk about is cortisol. If you eat sugar before you go to bed, some people cannot sleep. Or if you can sleep, you don't get a deep REM sleep and you feel tired the next day. Because sugar can also interfere with the cortisol production. Cortisol, is that hormone that gets activated in the morning to wake you up. It responds to light. Light hits the retina. The pituitary gland releases the cortisol. Cortisol wakes you up, and then you have your coffee, and you slowly get going. And that's why you shouldn't have, like blue light before you go to bed. However, you can have, blue glasses. But sugar can actually interfere with cortisol. It can spike it. And then it also accelerates muscle loss and bone density. I haven't even put that there because I also just found out there's a new study that has shown that sugar interferes with the bone marrow and can interfere with the stem cell production. Because stem cells are made, mostly in the bone marrow, and sugar can interfere with that too. And so that means that repairing is inhibited then too, because if sugar interferes with the stem cell production, stem cells are here to repair, and to grow. And if that is interfered, then yeah, and especially in older individuals, that could be devastating when you fall and you break something. All right, so what's the takeaway? What you eat isn't just calories; it's information for your cells, and it's not just calories, it's also what the body can do with the calories. I'm sure you know at least one person that's skinny, no matter what, he can eat whatever, and it doesn't get fat. Well, his body is able to, do something with the calories, and a lot of people can't because internally, a lot of things are not working as they should. It's very simple. Processed foods causes inflammation, hormone disruption, diseases, and speeds up aging. It doesn't take rocket science. And real food, whole foods, organic, pasture-raised, builds muscle, improves your health, strengthens your immune system, and you get longevity. And now we get to the fun part, the protein. Oh, where's my water? I put it somewhere here. There's so much talking. All right, protein quality. Why the quality of protein matters for building muscles. Protein is not just protein. All proteins are not equal. The quality matters, especially in elderly individuals. You have to consume more protein the older you get because of, if you want to build muscles or sustain the muscles, because of anabolic resistance. And is anybody in this room here that doesn't eat grass-fed, pasture-raised, organic? Do you eat conventional meat and eggs and that kind of stuff and farm-raised fish? Anybody? I mean, at some point we all do, but they're all perfect here. They don't need that stuff. Well, I mean, okay, so there's so much to say, but I know we're under time pressure here. So when it comes to grass-fed and grass-finished, right? I mean, there's so many loopholes. It like drives me nuts. Grass-fed means 6 months before they slaughter them, they feed them with grass. Grass-finished, and by the way, grass-finished is hard to find. That one is supposed to be, grass-fed all their life. Who would have known? So when the cows eat God-given food, things they're supposed to eat, then that's what you get. 100% pasture-raised, natural grasses and herbs and everything. And because they eat what they're supposed to eat, you get the healthy omega-3 fatty acids, and there's a fatty acid, CLA. CLA is, you can buy it in a supplement form because it helps to burn body fat. It helps metabolize fat. So people actually take it as a supplement form when they start a competition if they want to lose fat quicker. However, you can find it, in grass-fed beef, 3 times the amount than in regular. And and also supports immune function. And there's no antibiotics, there's no hormones, there's no exposure to glyphosate, GMOs, or pesticides because they're eating grass, unless they spray the grass. And what you get out of that, and this is important for you guys, when you eat grass fat, you get the muscle building ingredients. They're high in creatine, high in carnitine, zinc, selenium, vitamin E, B12. These are the muscle ingredients. That's what you need to build muscles. And you can find them in high amounts in grass fat because that's what they're supposed to eat. So, and that's, what you get. They're leaner, they're leaner than conventional. However, the fat they have is actually the healthy fat. That's the fat you want to eat if they're real grass fat, because you get the CLA and you get the omega-3 fatty acids. That's the fat you need. That's healthy. But when it comes to the conventional grain fat one, remember, we're trying to escape the pesticides, the herbicides, the GMOs. Well, little did you know, if you eat grain-fed beef, you actually get exposed to that again indirectly. The diet consists of corn, soy, wheat byproducts, or not sometimes, I don't know why I said sometimes, animal waste, and candy. At the very end, when they fatten them up, they feed them with candy, with sugar. They feed them with animal waste, which means all that stuff we don't consume. They grind it up, and feed them again. Yeah. And of course, you take away their natural instinct, what they're supposed to eat. You feed them with something they're not supposed to eat. I mean, there's a reason why they have, 7 stomachs, is because they're, digesting grass. But now you give them stuff they're not even supposed to eat. And as a result, you don't get the omega-3 fatty acids, and if very low, you get the high omega-6, which you're trying to escape because they're inflammatory and they cause chronic disease. And CLA is almost non-existent because they need the grass, for that to occur. And then on top of that, you get exposed to the growth hormone and the antibiotics. Now, keep in mind, if you eat sugar here and there and you eat conventional meat, and God forbid, and you have cancer, now everybody has cancer cells growing every single day. Now, the only difference is you have a good immune system and it fights it off. But if you should have a cancer growing and you consume conventional meat, growth hormone, oh God, it makes it grow. And on top of that, you eat sugar from hyperglycemic carbs, and you feed the cancer even faster. I mean, we have like about 2 million new cases of cancer every single year. Stats shows that every 4th person, will get cancer in their lifetime. I mean, it's crazy. But why is it only happening here? Why is it only happening in America? When I lived in Austria for 23 years, I never ever heard of cancer. I'm like, what is that? Is that an animal? And then you come here and cancer is like, oh, here's cancer. He goes, oh, my friend died, he died. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm telling you, everything that's happening in this country when it comes to getting sick and diseases and cancer and everything, it's all gets traced back to this. If anybody tells you that the food has nothing to do with the crisis we have here in America, then, especially if a doctor tells you that, then run away, walk away, because it's ridiculous. And then again, indirectly, you get exposed to the GMOs, to the grains, the glyphosate, and the pesticides, the very things you're trying to escape. And then your few micronutrients, the creatine and the carnitine, the zinc, and everything you need, to build the muscles, you don't have it in there, or very little. And the fats are highly inflammatory. Keep in mind, toxins get stored in the fat. And if they get exposed, obviously they get exposed to a lot of the toxins, it gets stored in the fat. Now, if you eat that meat with the fat, it's not just more saturated and high in omega-6 fatty acids. You also consume the toxins, the pesticides, and everything. And on top of that, they're confined. They don't see the sun, high cortisol, and you eat that. Anybody hungry now? And the same goes, I know we're running out of time, but the same goes for pasture-raised, organic eggs versus conventional. Yes, a dozen costs. How much have you paid? Like I paid like $9 or $10 versus like I don't even know how much the conventional one. $2, $3. I don't even know. But here's the difference. Again, the chickens eat the grass, the bugs, the worms, the organic seeds, and everything. And there's no pesticides, no GMO. And as a result, or as always, you get the healthy omega-3 fatty acids, and you get higher content of vitamin D, E, B12, A, and choline. Choline is so important, for methylation. Does anybody understand what the methylation is? I explained it before, like the conversion, from nutrients. Imagine there's like a million of traffic lights in our body that control every system. It doesn't matter how much traffic there is. If the traffic light is working, it can regulate the traffic in our body. And I'm talking about every function, on a cellular level, everything. However, what happens when the traffic light is not working and green is on every side? Now the cars are crashing and everything starts slowing down and things start, falling apart because the body cannot get the nutrients, everything. Anyways, choline is one of the most important nutrients when it comes to DNA methylation. And then again, there's no antibiotics, no hormones, and there's no glyphosate, pesticides, or heavy metals. And you can actually see that when the yolk, is deep in orange. I have a picture there on the next page. And because when you see like a very dark, orange yolk, that's high in carotenoids. Did you know the carotenoids actually helps to protect your eyes from blue light, which is quite amazing. And it also improves your eyesight. It's like an antioxidant that actually helps your eyes. And yeah, and again, same as usual, the fats are the healthy fats. When it comes to fats, there's super healthy ones and there's super bad ones. Have you heard that expression, you are what you eat? That actually comes from, the fat. You can eat sugar, yes, it's bad and everything, but the body can burn it off quick. But not the fat. The fat, every cell in your body has a lipid layer, surrounded by fatty, fatty, lipids. And nutrients, go in and out, sodium, potassium, pumps and everything. So that fatty lipid layer has to be healthy for nutrients to go in and out to fully function. But when you eat those greasy trans fat, those vegetable oils and everything, yeah, your cells get coated with that oil, and they can interfere with cell function, especially if it's like that, trans fat, like the fried food. Fried food is so bad. To put it in perspective, if you offer me to smoke 2 cigarettes before I eat fried food, I would do the cigarettes. Because cigarettes, after like a couple hours, I'm fine. But the fat stays in your system for a very long time because your cells get coated with that. And then again, the cheap ones always comes back to the same. The diet again, the corn, the soy, the grain-based fat, they're sprayed with glyphosate. They're confined in cages, so they don't even see the sunlight, and as a result, they're very low in vitamin E, if any. And again, omega-3 fatty acids, the fat you want, is very low. And again, you get the high omega-6 fatty acids. They also have antibiotics, and they also, like we said, have the GMO grains with all the chemicals. And the fat, is highly inflammatory because the animals eat what they're not supposed to eat. And here you get a picture. So yeah, next time you go shopping, you can actually easily see which one is the healthy. This one, I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen it before. Those are like the expensive ones for like $10 a dozen. They kind of look like that, but not always. Sometimes they look like this. It's like a mix of both. But the one you want to avoid is like this one, like super light, bright. That one doesn't have much, in there. Yeah, and that's really what you're paying for, right? I mean, $10 for a dozen is not cheap, but again, if you know what's behind it, I can tell you, it's like if you think you can save a few dollars on food, you might do that temporarily, but you eventually will end up on spending more money on doctor and drugs and medical bills. And the same concept again, it's the last one, wild caught versus farm raised. Whether it's chicken, whether it's the egg, it always comes back to the same. If they eat what they're supposed to eat, you get the good stuff. Like again, wild caught, they eat the natural prey, small fish, the krill, the plankton, and as a result, you get the omega-3. And by the way, the fish oil is the highest quality of omega-3 fatty acids. Like the EPA and the DHA, unless you're allergic to that, you should eat that every single day. That is the best fat you can get. 70% of your brain is made out of fat, and a big chunk of that is the omega-3. And again, there's low exposure to toxins. The ratio of the wild-caught omega-3 to 6 is like 3-to-1 or 5-to-1, and that's exactly what you want. And the protein is also, clean and more bioavailable. And there's no growth hormones or chemicals. And again, farm-raised, again, you get the pellets, they feed them with the pellets. Again, the soybean, the rapeseed meal, the corn, the gluten. Imagine you have celiac disease and you stay away from bread. And you eat certain, farm-raised fish, and they feed them with corn and gluten and everything, and the polypeptide. You can actually have a reaction because you're eating fish, and you're like, I didn't eat any gluten. Where'd that come from? And so many people ask me, can I eat a little bit of gluten? And I'm like, can you be pregnant or just a little bit pregnant? Like this tiniest amount, causes the reaction. Even if it's this tiny, and if this amount is in the fish, then you get a breakout. And again, you're exposed to the antibiotics, the antifungal, the artificial colorants, the plastics, the dioxins, the pesticides, and as a result, you get the high omega-6, and the protein quality is low, and it also has shown they're higher in mercury. And if you get tired, of eating meat or anything, same goes for the protein. If you get the grass-fed organic, you get the good stuff. You get the complete protein with all the 9 essential amino acids. They also are high in leucine. Leucine is part of the BCAAs. Leucine, which is part of the essential amino acids, every time you get exposed to leucine, it triggers protein synthesis. In other words, the body makes muscles. And so that's why, those, grass-fed meats and everything that are full of essential amino acids, you literally build muscles quicker than the conventional. That's not even an analogy, because of the essential amino acids, especially about the leucine. You can also buy that in powder form. And also, it's fast absorbing, so it's great if you drink it after workout. The bioavailability is much higher. And again, grass-fed cows, the fat is the fat you want, and there's no hormones or antibiotics. And if you get the conventional whey protein, you get the artificial sweetener, the fillers, and the heavy metals. And then plant-based, same thing. When you do the plant-based one, they're often incomplete, which means you need to consume more to get to the same amount than a whey protein, but it's still okay. There's less leucine in there, which means it doesn't stimulate muscle growth as fast. The absorption is low, which means it's not great after workout, but it's still okay. And usually you have to consume, 30 to 40% more of that protein to get to the same muscle building effect. And some of the good, sources are like rice, pea, hemp, chia, and spirulina. Spirulina is one of the best. It's one of the most nutritious, ingredient you can eat. It has all the minerals and vitamins and high in protein. Yeah, and then the last thing here is some longevity tips. All right, just to go over this quick. Prioritize more protein. So aim for at least 0.1, 0.5 grams per pound. So if you are 150 pounds, you can consume somewhere between 100, 120 to 150 grams of protein. And I hear this all the time. But it's so hard to eat so much protein. Okay. Your flat hand, if you put that on a plate, like this size, is about 6 ounces. 6 ounces of whatever, grass-fed chicken, beef, whatever, on average is about 50 grams of protein. You can easily eat 2 of those and have 1 shake, and you're already up to 150. So it's not that difficult. And then, combine it with strength training at least 2 or 3 times a week, because especially in elderly people, for bone density, that could, as a matter of fact, one of my clients, He's 92 years old. He fell 3 weeks ago, and he didn't break nothing. And the doctor was like, "That's a miracle." I'm like, "Well, I'm sure he got lucky, but also he fell straight down. He didn't break nothing, just like a little bit of here and there." And I said to him, I said, "I think you just want to test to see if this is working for you, huh?" Because there's no way. It's like, you didn't break nothing. I said, "You see, this is like paying off." And yeah, and then move daily. You know, in longevity, what we teach people, motion equals longevity. The minute you stop moving, that's when everything goes downhill. How many times did my mom like tell my grandma and stuff, like, "Oh, it's cold outside, you know, don't go outside, don't move too much, just be careful." Now we know. My dad actually used to tell me, like, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. Little did I know that 20 years later, there's a scientific name for that. It's called hormesis, which basically translates what it means. That means if you put your body under short, controlled stressors, such as cold plunge, exercising, high intensity, weightlifting, sauna, running, whatever, controlled stressors have shown the body has to adapt to that force or to that stress, and it makes you stronger and better. When you go to cold plunge, you know, every single day, the first time it's like, "Oh, it's cold, cold, cold." But the more often you do it, it's like, "Oh, it's nothing." So the body adapts to that. And that's what we use in longevity and in anti-aging, that process. And then sleep. If you would ask me if there's one thing you can recommend that's free, I would say it's sleep. Everything happens when you sleep. You repair, you regenerate, the hormones get released, you build muscles, the brain detoxes. That's when all the magic happens. If you don't get deep sleep, your life expectancy goes down. And the best sleep you get when it's cold, like 67 to 68 temperature has shown the best sleep. The darker, the better. In my bedroom, I can't even see my own hand in front of me. And yeah, and avoid screen time, or at least have the blue glasses. And then again, eat real foods. I think, you know, everybody understands now the difference between organic and pasture raised. You eat processed food, you get inflammation, you get chronic diseases. And then hydrate, you know, drink clean water throughout the day, avoid the sugary drink. I think if that's my sugar chapter, if that didn't scare you off, then I don't know what does. And then manage stress, you know, chronic stress, you know, speeds up the aging process, you know, and inflammation, and that's the first stepping stone to diseases. Practice breathing, you know, prayers, gratitude. This is actually an interesting one. How do we know that anti-aging, longevity, whatever you want to call it, is actually working? Well, we found out that 20% of our genome is set in stone, which means that makes up you, like how tall you're going to be, the hair color, you know, and everything. But we found out that 80% is epigenetics. And epigenetics, believe it or not, responds to nutrition, environment, social life, being loved, having a positive outlook in life. And this is not an analogy. All the centenarians around the world, what they all have in common is they all have great social connection. They all have friends. They all meet up, like in Italy. I mean, I've been there many times. Like, they're sitting outside playing cards and like watching people. They have good community. They're happy. They're calm. That literally has an impact on your genome, the 80%. And that's why we can actually interfere with how long you're going to live because of those 80% of epigenetics. If you eat healthy and you try to keep your stress level down, and that's not easy, and you try to escape the environmental, you know, factors and everything, you can literally live much longer. I think anybody that's in their 20s today, it's going to be normal to be 100, 105, 110. I mean, I can talk about this for hours, but you know, we already have the technology that's coming up. I think in the next 10 years or so, 15 years max, there's going to be a huge revolution in that field. And then, where are we? Oh, and then sunlight. Anybody here is avoiding the sun because it causes cancer and it's so bad for you? Anybody here? I don't even know where that came from, that the sun is so bad and causes cancer and everything. This is so funny to me. There's not one single study I've seen that proves that sun alone proves that it causes skin cancer. You show me. I have not found anybody. They're all like very inconsistent and like with chemicals and stuff. Okay, but I can tell you what does. If you eat all the processed food, all the chemicals, everything ends up in your bloodstream. You bake yourself in the sun and you put, all those lotions and potions and, the sunscreen. Every year, almost every year, you hear, sunscreen causes cancer. And then I think, wasn't it just last year, 2 of them got recalled? Yeah, it was last year again. Look it up. You can Google it. Because there's cancer-causing chemicals in the sun. And the problem is, when you put it on and then you go out, the sun penetrates those chemicals into the blood. You gotta, everything goes into on your skin, ends up in your blood, everything. And so you have to be really careful, like even like the makeup and everything. And the sun is also important. If you're afraid about the sun, the first 45 minutes in the morning, there's no harmful UV radiation. So that's the best time. And then the evening time, when you do some sun gazing and stuff like that. Because every time you go in the sun, you feel better. It boosts your mood, 100%. I left Austria because of that, because I had winter depression. We have like 6 months, 7 months. I don't see the blue sky. I don't see the sun. You want to shoot yourself. It's so bad. Here, yes, it's hot, but at least I see the blue sky. If I don't see the blue sky and the sun, I don't feel good. I tried it out so many times. It doesn't work for me. I even had to move back from Sedona because there's too much winter. You see the sun. And it also, sun also helps with methylation, which we already know how important it is. And then main purpose and social connections. Yeah, that's where the 80% epigenetics comes in. Stay engaged with your family, or like a community or church or volunteer. That being needed it's huge when it comes to epigenetics. The minute you feel like used no more, you're retired, you have no wife or no husband no more, your friends are already gone, and if you lose that, I don't know what to do, I don't feel needed, I'm just here and wait until it happens. Never ever do that. Find something to build the need up to be here, because that, I know I sound like a broken record. You can look at all the studies. I'm not just making this up. They literally has an impact on your epigenetics. It changes your genome just by creating social connections and be happy and be around people that are positive. If you're around negative people all the time, that literally has an impact on your genome. You can measure that. It's crazy. And then avoid toxins. Minimize the exposure to pesticides, plastic, smoke, and alcohol, and all that stuff. I mean, we know about this already. And then, keep your brain active, learn new skills, or read. Every time you learn something new, we found out it actually creates new neural connections. And 5 years ago, I made myself a goal that every day I have to learn something new. Doesn't matter if it's like listening to a podcast, reading a book or anything, or writing a book, something new. And I would say 85% of the time, I think I did it. But yeah. And that's how you keep everything going. And that's the end of it. And so longevity is not just living long, it's living strong and healthy. And I can tell you, if you haven't taken anything out of this, if you apply just some of those principles, just make a few changes, they come a long way. Stay away from the processed food. It's not for human consumption. Never in history were we eating pesticides, chemicals, metals, plastic. I mean, and that's really the reason, why America is the sickest country. Because in Europe, I'm from Europe, I know, we don't have all that stuff. And we're not as sick. We don't have as many cancer cases, way less. We don't have as many heart diseases and all that stuff. Everything is a world record here in America. We also consume, America consumes more drugs, I don't want to lie, but something crazy like than I think America consumes more drugs than most of the world together, or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but it just shows, there's something not working in this country, and gets back to the food we eat. 100%. All right, thanks.